We've all had those headaches, right? The kind that make you just want to shut everything out and hide in a dark room.
Yeah,
But for people who get migraines, it's a whole other thing.
totally.
And you've brought in some interesting stuff on magnesium glycinate. This Care Clinic article especially caught my eye.
It's a hot topic for sure.
So let's deep dive into the world of migraines, see what's really going on and whether this supplement lives up to the hype.
Sounds good.
Ah,
It's definitely gaining traction, but understanding why, we have to go beyond that whole it's just a bad headache idea.
right, because I think like a lot of people, I've wondered what actually makes migraines different.
Well, that Care Clinic article, it really captures how intense it is. Imagine like this pulsing pain, often just on one side, that you absolutely cannot ignore.
Sounds awful.
And then on top of that, you got the sensitivity to light and sound, maybe even nausea. It can totally derail your day.
I have a friend who gets migraines, and she says stress is a huge trigger for her. Even like the tiniest noise can be unbearable. And actually, the article mentions something called aura too. What exactly is that?
Aura is really interesting. Some people, before or even during a migraine, they experience these visual disturbances.
Visual disturbances.
Yeah, you can get shimmering lights in your vision, blind spots,
Yeah.
almost like a neurological light show warning you a migraine's coming on.
Wow, that's wild. That really highlights how this is not just a simple headache. This is complex neurological stuff we're talking about. And the article really stressed how much we still don't know about migraines, right?
Absolutely. We know that genetics and environment are involved, but the exact cause is still kind of a mystery. What is fascinating is that it's classified as a neurological condition because it involves this abnormal brain activity.
Okay.
So we're not just talking about pain signals going haywire. It's about the way your brain is processing sensory information, and that's going haywire too.
Okay, so this is serious stuff.
Uh,
Which leads us to magnesium. Now, I've heard people say it might help with migraines, but honestly, I need a refresher on why magnesium is so important in the first place. I mean, it's not just about, like, eating bananas, right?
no, you're right. It's way more than that.
Yeah.
Your body needs magnesium for over 600 enzymatic reactions.
600.
Yeah, we're talking muscle function, nerve transmission, blood sugar control, blood vessel regulation, all of that needs magnesium.
Wow, 600. So it's not just a multitasker, it's like the body's chief operating officer.
Exactly.
So if magnesium is basically running the show, how does that tie back to these intense migraines?
Well, that's where the research gets really interesting. There are studies that suggest people who experience migraines tend to have lower magnesium levels.
Interesting.
Now, this doesn't automatically mean that low magnesium directly causes migraines,
Okay.
but it could be a major factor.
So it's like a missing piece of the puzzle, potentially throwing the whole system off.
Exactly.
And this is where magnesium glycinate comes in, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not just any old magnesium that's getting all this attention for migraine.
You got it. The Care Clinic article focuses on magnesium glycinate specifically, and there's a reason for that. This type of magnesium is known for being highly bioavailable, meaning your body can absorb and use it much more effectively than other types.
Okay, so it's like magnesium glycinate has a VIP pass to get right to where it's needed. But why is that so important, especially for someone dealing with migraines? What makes it potentially better than just taking a regular magnesium supplement? That's what I'm really curious about. What makes magnesium glycinate potentially better at tackling those migraine mechanisms we talked about?
Yeah, that's the big question, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it all comes down to bioavailability, which is like a big buzzword in health these days. We're realizing it's not just about what you take, it's about what your body actually absorbs and uses.
Makes sense.
You know, 'cause the kind of regular magnesium, like throwing a message in a bottle out to sea and hoping it reaches the shore.
Okay.
But magnesium glycinate, that's like sending a text message direct and way more likely to get through.
I love that analogy. So walk me through this. How does this direct message actually work against migraines? The Care Clinic article talked about a few different ways, right?
Right, let's connect those dots.
Yeah.
One theory is magnesium glycinate helps regulate neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of those.
These are basically chemical messengers in your brain. And among other things, they influence mood and how we experience pain.
Okay.
So if those get out of balance, it can definitely contribute to those really awful migraine symptoms.
So it's like instead of those neurotransmitters being all over the place, magnesium glycinate comes in and says, all right, team, let's get back in sync.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And remember how we talked about inflammation being a factor in migraines?
Yeah.
Well, magnesium has anti-inflammatory properties, and magnesium glycinate seems to be particularly good at calming things down. Just picture it. Your blood vessels are already constricted, and then inflammation adds even more pressure on those sensitive nerves.
Ouch.
So magnesium glycinate comes in and soothes those irritated pathways, reducing that throbbing pain.
Okay, so it's like a two-pronged attack. Calming those overreactive pain signals and bringing down the inflammation. The article also mentioned something about blood vessels.
Right. Magnesium is known to relax blood vessels. And again, magnesium glycinate seems to be especially effective. You see, migraines are often associated with blood vessel constriction.
Constriction?
Yeah, it's like your blood vessels are squeezing tight, restricting that blood flow to the brain.
And that's what causes the pain.
That pulsing pain, that's the pressure building up. So magnesium glycinate helps those vessels relax, allowing blood to flow more freely, and that can ease that intense pressure.
This is starting to sound really promising, but the Care Clinic article wasn't like all sunshine and rainbows, was it? They definitely mentioned some things to watch out for, right?
They did, and it's important to be realistic. While the research on magnesium glycinate for migraines is promising, it's still early days. We need more research to confirm these benefits, figure out the best dosages, and see what the long-term effects are.
So it's not a magic cure-all, more like a new tool in the migraine toolkit.
That's a good way to put it. And as with any new tool, you need to read the instructions, or in this case, talk to your doctor. The article really stressed that people should talk to their doctor before starting magnesium glycinate, and for good reason. They mentioned it can have some side effects, mainly stomach stuff like diarrhea or an upset stomach.
Yeah, that makes sense. Especially since everyone is different. What works for one person might not work for another. Speaking of which, did they say anything about dosage? Like, how much magnesium glycinate are we even talking about here? Good point. Dosage is key. What did they have to say about that?
Well, they suggested starting with a lower dose of magnesium glycinate, something like 400 to 600 milligrams per day.
Okay.
Usually split into 2 or 3 doses.
Makes sense.
But they were very clear that this is just a general guideline.
Right.
Everyone is different, so it's really important to work with your doctor to find the right dose for you.
Yeah, for sure.
They can also figure out if magnesium glycinate would work well with any other migraine treatments you might be on already.
So it's all about personalized care, finding what works best for your own migraine patterns.
Exactly.
And that actually reminds me, the Care Clinic article wasn't just focused on magnesium glycinate, right? They also talked about tracking your migraines, which I thought was really interesting.
Absolutely. And it all ties back into that personalized approach we were just talking about. You know, as someone who's really trying to get a handle on their migraines, it's not just about finding a quick fix. It's about really understanding what's going on in your own body.
Right.
And tracking your migraines, whether or not you're using magnesium glycinate or other treatments, that can be really empowering.
It's like you become a migraine detective. Because so often we just want that, magic pill solution, but this is encouraging a much more proactive approach. What kind of things did they suggest tracking?
Let's say they mentioned a bunch of potential triggers, some of which we've already touched on, like stress levels, sleep patterns, diet.
Oh, yeah. Diet is huge.
Especially those sneaky culprits like aged cheese or processed foods.
Oh, man. I love cheese, though.
I know, me too.
Yeah.
But they also talked about things like hormonal changes, changes in the weather, even intense exercise can be a trigger for some people.
Really?
Yeah. It's all about noticing those patterns in your life that often come before a migraine attack.
So it's like you're putting together a puzzle, trying to find those links that might not be super obvious at first.
Exactly.
And what I like is you don't need some fancy app to do this, although those can be helpful. But honestly, a simple notebook or even just notes on your phone can do the trick.
Absolutely. The key is consistency and really paying attention. And over time, you might start to see those patterns. Like, okay, every time I have a big deadline at work and I'm not sleeping enough, bam, migraine.
Exactly.
Or whenever that certain perfume wafts past, I know I'm in for it.
Oh, that's so interesting. It's amazing how personalized these triggers can be. So it's about becoming an expert on your own body and your own migraines.
Yes.
And I imagine that kind of knowledge, even if magnesium glycinate does help, could make your migraine management even more effective, right?
100%. Maybe you find that combining magnesium glycinate with stress management techniques, dietary changes, or even just being prepared for those weather-related triggers, maybe that makes a huge difference for you. It's about having lots of different tools in your toolkit.
It all comes back to that personalized approach.
Yeah.
Figuring out what works best for you.
Couldn't agree more. And honestly, that's something we see over and over again in the world of health and wellness.
Sure.
There's rarely a one-size-fits-all solution.
Right.
But by being proactive, doing your research, talking to your doctor, and even experimenting a bit safely, and with your doctor's guidance, of course.
Of course, always.
You can find those solutions that really work for you and lead to a better quality of life.
That's a great message. So for our listeners who tuned in today, curious about magnesium glycinate and migraines, what's the one thing you want them to take away from this?
That's easy. Don't underestimate the power of knowledge and self-awareness. Migraines are complicated, but by understanding how magnesium might play a role, talking to your doctor about different treatment options,
Hmm.
and becoming a detective of your own triggers, you could really take control and navigate those migraine mysteries with way more confidence.
I love that. And on that empowering note, it's time for us to wrap up this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
But keep those brains buzzing, everyone. You never know what fascinating connections you might discover when you start digging a little deeper into your own health.